Hello everyone. This is quite a long video and quite involved, but we have to be able to tell you everything that has been going on. And it is to do with the defence contractors and the industry and the senators that they own, purchase or rent during their time in office. And we're going to name names for you, but first we're going to give you a little background. Many years ago, in the late 40s and early 50s, America removed the head of the Guatemalan government over tinned fruit. So you can imagine what they will do over resources that they really need. That gentleman was assassinated, and all he was trying to do was bring, rather like Niger are now doing by kicking the French out, was bring wealth and prosperity to his own people. America have taken part in 79 removals of people from power that they deemed were necessary or a threat to democracy or freedom. What they really meant was a threat to the military industrial complex and the resources that those lands have. As I say, they've been involved in many removals of these people in many countries. We could go through the whole list, but it would take forever. We'll name just a few. Noriega, Pinochet. These are the sort of people that they put in power. Zelensky is the latest of those. And obviously, there are many more horrible dictators who have since brutally killed their people. Now, directly and indirectly, America have been responsible for millions and millions of deaths. And if you think that's a ridiculous number, let's not forget that they killed over 500,000 children in Iraq and called that justifiable. And if that's justifiable, then you're an absolute monster for even suggesting that killing one child is justifiable. Let's go very quickly to move on to the defence contractors. Now, there are many of those, and they have that lovely term, don't they? Defence contract. Well, they really do make weapons of war, and those weapons of war end up killing civilians, men, women, children, with indiscriminate carpet bombing and all sorts of atrocities such as My Lai in Vietnam that was carried out. And remember that the Americans always leave in the end. So My Lai, Vietnam War, look at the Korean War, then look at Afghanistan, look at Iraq, and now look at Ukraine, which they are abandoning so they can conduct a war in the Middle East. And that is just a face-saving operation. They don't care about Israel. They don't care about Palestine. They care about the oil and the money and the pipeline going through and making money by having wars with anybody that they deem is necessary to do so. Anybody who doesn't dance to the tune of the neocons or the American State Department as it stands at the moment. In fact, the last time I can remember less wars was actually under Donald Trump. There were less wars than there were before, and there was one or two presidents before him as well. We were that close to having a nuclear war in 1963 when John F. Kennedy solved the Cuban Missile Crisis 62-63, and we had obviously Khrushchev in charge of Russia. Now, the little known thing is how close we actually came to that nuclear war. Everybody thinks because it was the blockade of Cuba. There was a Russian submarine that was surrounded by American ships and its surface, and there was a very tense standoff. Now, at the time, Russian commanders, two of them had keys to fire the missile, so there were two captains on board. A plane flew over the top of that submarine, and one commander panicked because he thought that they were about to bomb them. He dashed down to actually put in the codes to launch these nuclear missiles. Luckily, an American ship signaled to the other captain, who was still on the bridge, that they had no idea that that plane was coming over and not to be alarmed. That captain then dashed downstairs and managed to stop the commander of that Russian submarine launching a nuclear missile, which would have started World War III. That's how close we came. When you ramp up the stakes of this sort of thing, you never know where it's going to end. And now we have America pushing in Iran, pushing the Russians and pushing the Chinese. It wouldn't be anything to do with the fact that they are the three people that are going to build a shall we say, a competition pipeline in that area in the Eastern Med. So let's get back to the senators, shall we, and the defence contractors, because what tends to happen is we all know that politicians like to sell their soul, and they all like a seat on the board of something when they're finished, and they all like money in a nice offshore account. Now, I'm not suggesting these senators have done the same thing, but there have been many that have done it before. And as we know, places like Ukraine, you can buy a politician as easily as you can buy a packet of cigarettes. And we are going to go through from 2019 all these senators who have been accepting money. Now, I'm not going to give you the amounts because it would take too long, and I'm not going to give you exactly who, but I will tell you all the defence companies, and you can go and look it up for yourself. And it's not a problem at all. So what we have from December the 13th, 2019, we had these various defence contractors. We had Honeywell, we had Boeing, we had Lockheed Martin, United Technology, Huntington Ingalls, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, Airbus, Leidos, BAE Systems, Leonardo, and Textron. We also had Raytheon. So there are just some of the defence contractors who put campaign funds into these people. And you will be amazed. I am just going to give you a small portion of the senators that were taking these donations from these people who make weapons of war. So we have David Perdue of Georgia, Ray Blunt, Missouri, Susan Collins of Maine, Rick Scott of Florida, Tom Carper of Delaware, Bill Cassidy, Louisiana, John Hoeven of North Dakota, John Borman of Arkansas, Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, Gary Peters, Michigan, Jerry Moran, Kansas, Tina Smith, Minnesota, Shelley Moore Capito, West Virginia, Dianne Feinstein, California, over 500,000 there, Mitt Romney of Utah, Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Jerry Connolly of Virginia, Ro Khanna of California, Greg Gianforte of Montana, Debbie Dingell of Michigan, Phil Rowe of Tennessee, Fred Upton of Michigan, Bob Gibbs of Ohio, Joe Kennedy from Massachusetts, Bob Gibbs, sorry, I've said Bob Gibbs, Kevin Hearn from Oklahoma, Francis Rooney of Florida, David Joyce of Ohio, David Price of North Carolina, Thomas Susie of New York, David McKinley of West Virginia, Dean Phillips of Minnesota, Kurt Schrader of Oregon, Mike Kelly and Dwight Evans of Pennsylvania, Mark Meadows, North Carolina, John Yarmouth of Kentucky, Louis Frankel of Florida, sorry, Mike Sherrill of New Jersey, Van Taylor of Texas, Jim Sensenbrenner of Wisconsin, John Rutherford of Florida, Catherine Clark of Massachusetts, Rob Whitman of Virginia, Daniel Mauser of Pennsylvania, David Reuter of North Carolina, Dina Titus of Nevada, Lizzie Fletcher of Texas, Rich Allen of Georgia, Susie Lee of Nevada, Bill Fleurs of Texas, and Hal Rogers of Kentucky. So they are just some of the senators who have received campaign funds from the so-called defence contractors. And it is very, very important that we recognise that these people are then tied. Now, they've either received them personally or their spouses have received them, and it's either in a gift of money or shares. Now, the reason for giving them stock and shares in those companies is because you have to then keep voting on the defence spend, don't you? Because if you don't, then your stocks don't go up, you don't make any money, and you don't get some extra cash in your pocket. So let's just have a look of the $2.6 trillion that were available at that time. 1.25 trillion of that went to defence companies in one form or another. They split it up into like 8 or 9, 10 categories, and of those 10 categories, they are then able to turn around and say, oh, it's just for this and it's for that and everything else. So they hide it, but the actual total was 49% of the actual spend that was available, and the other 1.35 went to health, human services, education, homeland security, energy, and other things. So if we sort of look at that and the amount of money that has been spent on Ukraine, and we look at the money that was given to the poor people of Lahaina who lost their homes, $700 doesn't even bury a child. So when we look at how much money has been given to Ukraine and how much money is being given to Israel, you can clearly see that they don't care about Israel and Palestine. They don't care about Ukraine, and they care even less about you, because that money could have been used, first of all, to help the people of Lahaina, and secondly, to help the people of America. What we would like to do now is highlight somebody for you who's even worse. And this gentleman has turned around and said that he's a businessman and not a politician. So, as he always does, he scuttles away to make more money. Now, he is a congressman, and he has traded stocks before the start of the Middle East conflict. He is a representative called Mark Wayne Mullen, and he purchased $50,000 worth of Raytheon stock, who is a major defence contractor, or weapons of war, if you like, on September the 13th. Okay, so the horrible thing about this gentleman is that he is, as I say, a congressman, and he sits on the US Armed Services Committee. So this man is insider trading, basically. And the horrible thing about that is he's making money off of children dying, as are other senators that we've mentioned. And then we come on to some of the more important ones, and there are many, many more, but I'm just going to select one for you. Nikki Haley, who has turned around and said that the head of the UN was disgusting and should be disqualified from the post, the Secretary General. I would say the same should be done with Nikki Haley's candidacy. So, Nikki Haley, there are people out there that say that you were $15,000 in your bank account in 2017, and you were up to £1 million worth in debt, allegedly. And allegedly, her husband now, her and her husband now, a vast investment stock portfolio and an income of over $12 million a year. You now live in a $5 million mansion, and you were on the board of Boeing, a defence contractor, for £300,000 a year, or dollars a year, and you still own $250,000 in Boeing stock, do you not? She also has done speaking engagements for the advocacy group United Against a Nuclear Iran, whose donors claimed it was not in the public interest and would be against national security if their names were made public. Well, we know, don't we, Nikki, that there's quite a few of your defence friends in your campaign funds and donating money to you. There's also an interesting gentleman called Richard Kang, and Richard Kang is an advisor to Prism Global Management, which, Nikki, you earned $750,000 from, didn't you? Now, Kang sits in the defence world. He sits as an advisor to America's Frontier Fund. That is the former head of QTEL, and it is the CIA venture capital arm. Her husband, Michael Haley, has his own defence contracting firm, Allied Defence, which you made $500,000 from, didn't you? Which overlaps with a sister company, Defence Engineering Services, which navigates legal and political problems in the defence systems spending. So you can all sort of guess what that is. And also from ICRO Systems Aerospace Manufacturing, you managed to get $1 million of income. It would be very, very churlish of me to turn around and say that most of the other candidates are not taking money from defence spending, but we would also highlight that. Isn't it time in America that you turn around and you throw these people out of office? If somebody is promoting war and they are getting rich off of men, women and children dying, they shouldn't be anywhere near a seat of power. They shouldn't be anywhere near making judgment calls. And while we're on the subject, let's have a little talk about the Institute for the Study of War, which bears pressure on the outside and Victoria Nuland, who is the Secretary of State, or the Under Secretary of State, I should say, is applying pressure from the inside. Now, Victoria Nuland, you will know, is responsible as well for funneling money into Ukraine. And she obviously did that through that wonderful National Endowment for Democracy, which is basically a CIA front for overthrowing governments. And they overthrew the democratically elected president of the country at the time, Yukановich, and they installed a puppet government. And there is indeed a phone call from Victoria Nuland to various Americans stating exactly how they were going to achieve this. And indeed, you can see her while people were being slaughtered in the Maidan Square. She then turns up with a bag full of groceries, handing out bread and hot soup to people protesting in the square, while these neo-Nazi lunatics storm the parliament and chase off the government so they can install their own puppet regime. Millions were given by the National Endowment for Democracy to achieve this, all because Yukановich didn't want to accept a ruinous loan from the IMF. And the Institute for the Study of War is run and owned, or started and run, by Kimberly Kagan. And guess who is married into the Kagan family? Yes, you've got it. She is married to obviously a Kagan, and her sister-in-law is Victoria Nuland. I think you can see where we're all going with this. So what we have is a money-making machine with everybody getting rich: politicians, arms dealers, and bankers. And we have you paying. One way or the other, you are suffering, either economically or through losing loved ones, as these people go about their business, and the millions and millions of CEOs and workers inside the defence industry at high levels are getting rich off of men, women, and children being slaughtered. If you think that's right, then do nothing. If not, join me in trying to expose these people and shout out who they are. My line is always open for people to come on to the front line and speak to us, and I will be interested to hear from you. If you know of other senators and other people who are taking massive amounts of money from defence industries. While we are on the subject, we had a video banned by a wonderful lady who has been to Lahaina and to Maui, called Tracy Derwin. She's Brush Junkie on YouTube. And when I highlighted this on various platforms, it was taken down straight away. Now, we know that Rand and Rayathon have defence weapons up on Maui. And we also need to know, was anything used while the fires in Lahaina were going on? And there are some questions there to be answered, given what we are able now to ascertain from the heat maps that we were able to take from the island. And it would be interesting to see whether they will be able to respond. One believes they won't. But as I say, this is the military industrial complex, is a very, very dirty and horrible conglomerate, and it kills people, and it disappears people and silences people. And I would urge you to look into it more closely, because if you cut the head off the snake, then everything follows from there. And what they are doing is snake-like. You may not think this is worthwhile for you to look into, but it will be you next. It's you that's suffering. They are as bad as the conglomerate drug companies out there and Monsanto. They're even worse. Monsanto and the drug companies cause all sorts of disasters for people. These people, they do it decade after decade after decade, and nobody stops them. And it's time, I think, that we did.